Hi guys, Joe here from Joe Concept. How are we doing today? I'm excited to be introducing us to drivers in Blender, and it's such an interesting topic to dive into. Can be really complex, but it's as very simple as it can be. You just need to understand the basics and how it works. So in this video, we're going to be looking at how to use driver to get something like this where you are rotating an object under rotation, and you can see from here that the rotation is quite different. All right, so you see that, and we'll be looking at the limitation of constraints and where drivers comes to play. So this is a basic simple use case of that, where we are going to be using mathematical functions to drive another object, to create relationship between objects. And then from there, we're also going to look now use it, take a use case whereby we're now using the driver to create a car, whereby moving the car will rotate the tire. So you don't need to animate all of this by yourself. You can just use a driver to do that operation. And then after that, we're also going to look at how to do a basic flickering lights. All right, so light flicker, whereby now you don't need to animate or you don't need to move any object. You just play this object in time, and then it will be flickering like you see here. As you can see, the light here flickering and all of that. So this is everything we're going to be looking at in this tutorial, and it's so much to learn from here. So but then all I just need to implore you is to take your time, listen, and try to learn it with open mind. And once you understand this technique, everything will be easy from there on. If you're new to my channel, I would just implore that you please subscribe, because I do tutorials like this every time. And then I would also appreciate if you can engage with it. If you have any question whatsoever, just ask them in the comment section, and I'll try my best to explain to you. So without taking much of your time with all of these talks, let's just get into Blender and how this is done. All right, so I'm going to start by just creating two objects. So I'll call this, I'll just duplicate and put this other object here. I'll call this object A, obj underscore A. Then I'll call this second one object B. All right, so what I want to do is I want to drive the rotation of this object by controlling this. So I want this object to be the driver of the rotation of this object. So there are different ways you can do that. Parenting will not even work, because if I'm trying to parent this and I select these two guys and I control P, and I try to rotate this along, let's just say around our Z, see that the object will rotate about its axis, and that's not what we want. What I want is that I want it to drive the rotation of this object. All right, so I want, as this one is rotating about Z, this should also rotate about Z. Now the next step will help us achieving that, and that is to select this object B and go and add a constraint to it. So if you add a constraint and you say you want to copy rotation, now that will give you exactly what I just said. So I just need to, since I want rotation Z, I will turn off this. First off, select the object that I want to drive it, which is this in this case. Then, since I've chosen Z, so what that means is that if I come here and I select this main object, drive, you see that this is giving us what we want. So if this is what you want, then you can just stop the tutorial here and continue. And also, if you want to drive the reverse of this, you can come to the invert and select the invert as well. So instead of it going same direction, now will now be going the opposite direction. You can see that is it going the opposite direction. So let's see this again. Yeah, it's going the opposite direction. So you see that, you see their direction. So this is fine. Is so fine. But now the challenge with this approach is, what if I want the Z rotation of this object, Or let's start with, what if I want this object? Okay, let's start with the z rotation of this object to affect the y rotation of this object. Then that's the limit to this constraint. So this constraint will be able to achieve that for us. We won't be able to drive the y rotation of this object B with the z rotation of A. So that's where the next will come into play, which is your driver. So basically what we need to do is, so what I would do first is to do the first thing we've done in constraint and then set everything. There's a lot to do here. So the way you work with the driver is that um, the recipient is what you're adding the driver to. So in the case of when you have something that will be driving in, but in some cases, you might have that the the object is driving itself, which we are going to get into in a moment. So in this case, we want object A to drive object B. So that means we are going to add it to the object B. That's what we're going to add the driver control to. And so for us to add the driver, we also need to decide what direction we want. So let's still start with the Z rotation. So I'll come to the transform and come to the Z rotation, right click on it. And then you will see this option that says add driver. So if I click on this, you're going to see this purple color, and once you move your mouse away, it disappears. You see that uh, dialog box you saw just now, it disappeared, but you can bring it back out. So this purple colored option is letting you know that this object is being driven by some other object, so you cannot change its rotation like that until after it's been set, right? So if I right click it, and for me to show back that dialog box, just right click on that same variable and then go to edit driver, and then it will show you this guy. And then there's a lot of things to unpack here, so you can come to this place and choose whatever you want to do. Maybe you want to get average value, sum value, minimum value, maximum, but we want to stay with the scripted expression because we're going to be using expression to drive all of this. And then once you have that expression set, the next thing you want to do is coming down to this place where you have your variable. Blender added one variable for us, and it calls the variable var. We can always change this, but then we need to select an object to drive it. So if I click on this, I'll be able to select the object, and then this object is now in it. So right now, if I try to rotate now, you see nothing happens because we've now set what will be driving the rotation, which is this. So let's go into the operation, because right now if you come here and you try to drive, you see nothing still happens. The reason why nothing will happen is because you've set an object to drive, but you've not given an expression or what you want to drive. So if you come beside this variable and you click, you have different things you want to use to drive. So you want to just keep it to the transform channel because you want to drive the transform of this object. So you have other things that you can drive, single properties and all of that. So let's just go with the transform. And now we need to now tell what we are going to be using to drive, because right now, by default, Blender is using the X location to drive the Z rotation of this. So meaning if I select this, when I go to the X location and I change, it's supposed to drive, but it's still not driving yet. And the reason why it's not driving, like I said earlier, is expression is required. So if I right click and I go to edit driver, if you come up to where you have your expression, you don't have anything here. You see, your expression is set to 0. So that's why, so if even if you move it, nothing will happen. So we need to use the variable we have here to drive the expression. So what we can do is we can give a value for our variable. So let's say, for instance, our variable will be A. All right. So that means if we're going to write an expression, we're going to be using A in this expression. All right. So let's look at a very simple expression we want to have. So if we just change this to A, and what will happen now is that our variable, which is on X, which we've set to A, will now be driving this object. It was on 0 before. So if we come here and I go to X, see, moving this now is now driving the rotation of this object, right? So if you see the movement, it can also go back to 0. Remember, that's not what we want to drive, but that's just a bonus you just saw. What we want to drive is the rotation Z, to drive the rotation Z of that. So you come to the type, change it from the X location to the Z rotation. And once we're done with that, if we come here now, location will not do anything anymore because we've given an expression that you should use the z rotation. Now we are now back to that constraint. So this is giving us what the constraint gave us. If I want to have an inverse, like as I'm moving this, it should rotate the other way. We can do that as well. Go back to this, right click, edit, and then all we just need to do is come to the expression and put a negative in front of that a, and that will be the inverse of what we have. So if I click on this right now and I try to drive, see it now goes in inverse direction, as you can see. So now this is now where we are with the constraint. So let's try to drive more, which the constraint, where the constraint broke. Let's try to see how that will be done. What if changing the rotation of this object, I want it to affect, changing the x rotation of this object, I want it to affect the y rotation. So what I need to do is, I really do not need to create another expression on my y anymore. I can actually copy this expression and paste it. So if I right click, you see option to copy driver, and then right click, you can paste it onto this place. And then I don't want it to affect my Z, so I can right click on the Z and delete the driver. That's just all I need to do. So again, let's come back, right click on this and paste. So we only have it on that position now. So if we come here and rotate this, you see that it's now affecting the Y. This is where the constraint has broken, which is not really, it wouldn't solve for us. So the other thing you also have is that if you notice, you can actually use this. What use case do we have for this? You can actually use it in case of maybe a cogwheel, your gear system, where you have a smaller cogwheel and a bigger cogwheel. So as one is rotating the other object, but either it's becoming, the rotation is faster or is slower than the original rotation. So what I'll do is I'll take this guy back, I'll delete and take it back to the Z so that the Z is what is changing. So I'll go back to this and write an expression to say that. So if I go to the edit driver, I'll now write an expression that says that this multiplied by 2. So what this means now is that the rotation of object A will be driving the rotation of object B such that object B will be twice as fast as the rotation of object A. That's what this times 2 is. So if we come to A and we increase, see that just moving this, the object B is already moving faster compared. So let me just increase this value so you see it really well. So let's say it's going to be like 5 times as fast subject A. So if we come to A and we drive, see, just moving a little bit, that is already driving, that's moving faster compared to what we have right there. So this is one of the use case where you can have this object affecting another object. And then you would ask yourself, then what other thing is this? There's a whole lot of things you can unpack with this. I've already showed you how you can use the movement of an object to affect the rotation. So if you think, then another use case will now be in a car. So you want to have a car moving without animating the wheel separately. So you can just create a driver such that when you move the car along the forward position, the wheel should rotate. So let's see how that is done. And by the way, the Blender file that I'll be using, I'll share a link in the description. So I'll just quickly switch this to a car scene, which I have right there. So I'll just change this to, I really do not need the texture. So I've broken this thing apart. I've kind of parented them. So this car is the wheels, everything are parented to the car, right? These wheels are separate objects and they've all been parented to the car. So what we want to do is we want the movement of this car along this y-axis to affect the rotation. Oh, let's see. I think it's rotation. Yeah, rotation X. So don't forget that rotation X. So I want to zero out all this so that everything is zeroed. So change this to 0 and then 0. So I want the movement y here to affect the rotation x of all these objects. So let's quickly do that. Remember, you add the driver on the recipient object. So I will just add to this so that I can duplicate on the other one. So once I have it, the whole control working perfectly for this one, every other one will be easy. So I'll go to the rotation x of this tire, right click, add driver, and again, I want to select the object that I want to drive. This is the object that I want to drive. Let's go back into the editor. Right now, it's giving us a variable, same variable plus this. The reason, remember I told you, the reason is because we have variable here. So I can say my variable will be b this time. So that means whenever I'm writing an expression, I will use this variable value or this value in my expression. So I have to change this to b. All right. So again, I said I want the location y to affect it. So I'll come here, change this to location y, and I want it to affect this. So let's see if I move, see that this is now going. Yeah, it's now affecting the location y of this object. But now the thing now is that if you notice the tire is kind of sliding, is not the rotation is not really going as much as it should. All right. So what we'll do is go back, right click, edit this, and then we can now start to add an expression. So taking this value and it's adding just zeros to it. So really this doesn't really matter. If I even if I make it b, it still gives me the same thing that I had before. So that plus zero really doesn't do anything. So what I want to do is if I right click, I want to increase the speed of my rotation. So I'll just multiply, let's say multiply 2 first and see what that will give us. So if I increase, yeah, it's beginning to come out fast. See that? I think I can still increase this speed. So I will come here, right click, edit. Let's try to go 4, and then let's move this. I think 4 is too fast actually. So, but you have that control to set the speed of your rotation. So I think 3 should be able to do us justice. 3. And once we're done with that, and I come here and yes, I think 3 is fine. So all I need to do is just come here, right click, copy my driver, and then come to this other one, paste my driver here, and go to every other tires and just paste the drivers to every other tires, and then we have our objects. So paste. So if we check this now, see it's moving perfectly well. Let's check the other side. And now the other side is now going inverse. You can see instead of it of the tire moving forward, is moving the other direction. So you should be able to guess that. It's a very simple thing to do. So just select these ones, right click on them, go and edit. All you just need to do is add a negative in front of the P, and that will do that. So I'll do the same thing here, right click, edit, add a negative in front of P. And once we move now, this should go smoothly. And this doesn't affect this other one because they have their separate controller. All right. So that's the use case for your basic wheel. And another thing you can also do is to drive materials. So for instance, you want to drive an object without driving another object. So you don't want another object to be the driver of this object. You just want it to be driven by itself. So what you can do is you can, so let me just switch to that other scene. So I have my light scene. So I've created this object like a LED indicator. And if you go to the materials, you see, it's just a material. So I want to have a flicker effect on this object so you understand how you can use drivers to do all of this without even animating. And so Let's see how that will be done. So I've I've created a material for this object, and I just gave this light material an emissive material and has an emission of 1, just red material. That's just all I have here. So for me to start doing this, I'm going to drive this strength because this is what I want to drive. I want it to go this way. All right. So how do I drive that? And that will now start bringing us to this. So usually you would want to add a constraint, and then you want to look for a way to start driving the variable of this. But the problem with this is that we don't want another object to drive this object. We just want it to be automatic in its driving. Remember in the previous examples, we were working by using an object to drive another object. This time, don't want to do anything. We just want Blender to do the work for us by using its own self, just driving this object by its own self, all right, in time. So how that is done is that first things first, this variable is there because it requires an object to drive it. So this time we don't want any object to drive it. So what we'll do is we're going to cancel this out so that no object will be driving this. So let's see how we can do it such a way that um, something else will be driving this object. So now, since we are not using a variable, so there will be no need for this VAR. All right, it's very important. There will be no need for this VAR. If we leave this as 0, you'll see what happens. It turns off and nothing happens. It just turns up all through the whole timeline. So let's go back and then how can we drive this? So what we can do to drive this is in time, and don't forget we want to drive this in time, all right? And you know our time is calibrated in frames. So we are going to be using the word frame to drive that. So as soon as I change it to frame, you notice it goes to 1. And you notice my frame is set to 1. So it change this value to 1. If I start playing, it will keep increasing based on the number of my frame. See that? If it goes to 150, it will change this to 150. So now we are making headway. We are not driving by ourselves anymore. We are not using it, we are not keyframing, but it's just automatically keyframing itself and driving itself. But we don't want this. We want a flicker effect, all right? So for us to get that flicker effect, we want to look for a way to be able to turn on and off, on, off, on, off. So there is an expression in Blender that does that. And so we want it to go on and off periodically. So you should already get what I'm going to be using. So I want this frame to be driven by an expression that makes it go periodically. So we'll use a sine wave, put the frame inside the bracket. So what we are doing now is that this frame will be driving the intensity of the light, but the frame would not drive the way it was driving just now. It will now be driven by this function, which sine wave function. So you know the way sine wave goes. So your sine wave goes um, it goes up and down, up and down. Don't mind my sketch. So at a point in time, it will go to the peak, the highest, and then it goes to the lowest, highest, lowest, and over a period of time. So that's what this sine would do. So it will take our frame up and down to this. So let's see if we play this now. You see, it's beginning to play. We're beginning to get that flicker effect. All right, so this is good. So if you want to stop here, that's that's up to you. It's fine. You could just stop the tutorial right here and then go and do whatever project you have. But we're looking for how to have more control over this because right now we only have this flicker effect. We don't have control over the its speed because right now it's going really fast. What if we want to change the speed, either make it even faster than this or make it slower? How do we do that? So I'm going to go back and right click, go back to edit driver and bring this up. All we need to do is go inside the frame, inside the brackets, and then multiply by whatever value. Remember when we did basic the introduction. If you multiply it by a positive value more than one, you are increasing. So if I make this two, that means the speed will be very fast. See that? So if I want it to be slower, I need to just reduce my value here. So let's say I'm putting this to like 0.2, and then we play this. It goes, you see, the the speed is not like we had before. So you have that option to control your speed, all right? So you already get how you can increase your speed now. The next thing we want to do is, what if we want to, because right now is being controlled by this, but we want to have a particular strength, because right now this strength is not hitting our peak, what we want. So let's say, for instance, I want this to get to 10, like the strength to get to 10. But right now it's hard for us to get to that 10 peak. So what we can do is we can also further go to this expression and edit the driver. And then just outside this, we can multiply this by 10. So what this will do is that it's going to increase. It's going to, this, don't forget, 0.2 is for the speed of the flickering, while outside the bracket multiplied by 10 is now talking about the intensity of that light, which is a strength, meaning it will get all the way to 10. All right. So if we come back here and we play, see, it's now really high. And you see, it is almost 9 points, 9 something something. So if I keep going, it will not exceed 10. All right. Once it gets to that, it will start coming back. All right. So that's how you can control your intensity, right? The intensity or the strength of your light. Another thing you can also do is, right now you are controlling the intensity. What if you want, if you notice that as it's going out, it's going all the way to black, which is 0. We want to clip our minimum. We don't want it to get all the way to black. We still want to have a little bit light, but not total darkness. You can also still do that by adding a lower the least brightness you want to have. So for that, you just need to add a number to this. So if I add a plus and I choose a value, don't forget our maximum is 10, right? If I make it 0, that means it will still get to the black, which is no intensity, no brightness. But if I don't want it to get to black, I can change this 0 to, let's say, 3. It will get to 3. Okay, you are seeing, but it's just a little bit more than 3. So let's take this all the way to, let's just say, like 7, and we should be able to see some changes right here. Okay, sorry. Um, if we go back here and do here, let's change this to 8 a little bit first to start with. Okay, so coming, let me see, something is missing, and we should have a plus right there, plus 8. Let's go to plus let's go higher than the 10 first and see if it still goes back to black. So this is not going back to black. So I think you have to just get to a point where you start to see this moving. When I was practicing, it didn't get to that high value. But then what you just need to do is start changing this value, and that will give you. So if we make it like 10, see, 10 is almost, but not black, not black. You can see it's not getting all the way to black. If I make it 9, in this case, 9 is going to black. So that means when I start at that 10, it will just come to red without going all the way to black, and then you see that. So you can just, all you just need to do is start changing this value after the plus. That will give you the effects you want. But what I want you to notice right here is, let's take this to like 5. If you notice the way the light is going on and off, there is a kind of a follow. You can see there is a curve to it. If you understand animation, you will see that there it goes at a uh, curve. There's easing in and out, somewhat like that. So what if I don't want to have that smooth transition? I want to have like a constant change. I don't know if you understand, like a step, just pop, pop, just change. I don't want it to animate out and off. So what I will have to do is to add another expression to this. So if I come here, and that expression will require me to tell Blender to enable the Boolean operation, which is the on and off state. So how do we enable that? All this expression that we have here, everything that you are seeing here, we are going to put them inside the brackets right from the sine wave. Put it inside the bracket and close the brackets of the 5. Once we put that in the brackets, um, and we put a, oh, sorry, that will not work, because if I put this inside the bracket and I do this, it will not really do the operation. So what we are going to do first is just note that value, multiply by 10 and plus 5. So for us to have that effect, what we'll do is to add a greater than 0, and that will give us that on and off states, right? See the way it's going on, off, on, off. There's no animation to it, it's just going on and off state. So basically that's what this expression does, is to enable the on and off states. Now, that's when after this we can now start putting the other expression, which is increasing the brightness and then setting the minimum. All right. So now how that will be done is that what I'm saying, what I wanted to do before will not work is, if I go back to the initial operation, which is multiplied by 10 plus 5, remember this, and I come here and go and add this, you see that it goes back to the initial one I just showed you without putting into consideration the strengths and the base that we set. So which is why you have to have them in their own bracket. You would also say that, you argue that, what if we put this in this bracket like so and close this also as well? It will still not do anything. And the reason is because it treats the Boolean operation first before the strength and the base. So what we should have done was to come here, put this Boolean operation, all these guys, I'm going to remove them. And then I will now put this bracket out. And this is what will now do the operation. So what we have here is, you have your sine wave, which is setting the number of frame, and this is the speed of the flickering. And then this allows you to enable the on and off states. And after you've enabled the on and off states, you are now increasing the power and then setting the base value. And then you see what we're having here. So at this point now, we can, you see that now that 5 value is now working. Notice that if I take this to like 2 now, you see it's now going, it's working the way it should work before now. We had to take it to like 12 and stuff like that. So if I make this 0, it will go completely off. If I make it 1, it will not go completely off, but you still see that red stuff. So what I can do is I can just take this like 0 point, let's say 0.2. So it's not totally off. You can see the way the flickering is going on. All right. So this is the use case of this expression. And you can have this. You can see I'm playing this in the timeline, and they are not animated. Everything is just animated by itself with the help of the driver. So there's a lot to unpack with this, all right? So there's a project I'm actually working on and getting headway on that project. I hope to do a tutorial about it. It's a traffic system, traffic light system, and all of that. There's a lot. As I'm diving into this, I'm seeing more complicated things and I'm learning new things. And I think I'll just stop this tutorial here because it's getting too long. And if you feel this was helpful, you've learned something in this tutorial, please do give me a like and a thumbs up. You can also give a comment and just ask for whatever you want me to talk about in the nearest future, and I'll try my best to do that. And if you are new to my channel, please do subscribe because I do tutorials like this every time. So do have a wonderful day and God bless you.